Hello, Rutgers. Thanks so much for that introduction. Thanks for having me. My name is Richard Casper. I'm the co-founder executive of Creative Vets, which you just heard. I'm so pumped, so excited to be here. I actually have a really busy day too, by the way. I have a write with Craig Morgan after this, helping a veteran tell their story, and then tomorrow a write with Tyler Farr. It's been my life has been kind of crazy, and how I've gotten here has been even crazier. I really, when they asked me to speak at this, and I asked about what this was about, and they talked about improvise, adapt, and evolve, I knew instantly I was the perfect fit because my whole life has been adapting and evolving and improvising on every little section of my life. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about my life, a lot of it. It's not a boring one, so I hope you can stay with it and be engaged with it, even though I'm a combat disabled veteran. A lot of people might not relate to me, but the way that I'm going to present this is going to be relatable because I do it through art and music. And ultimately, I want to talk about how education saved my life and how by teaching very intentionally, we could save more lives and we could help just the world come together in a time that needs it so much. So I'm going to kick off into a slideshow. And for anyone who doesn't know, I have a traumatic brain injury. So it's a left traumatic brain injury. It affects my my word recall. So they told me the Rolodex in my head was broken when I first came home. And it affects my short-term memory issues. And so I can't actually memorize speeches. And so again, here's where I had to kind of improvise. The first time I ever got asked to speak was actually at VCU at a keynote, my first time ever speaking. So before this, I probably talked about myself or creative vets 10 to 15 minutes at a time, never more than that. I get this invite and they say, hey, will you speak for a whole hour about what you just did here at VCU? Because we hosted one of our art programs, which again, I'll talk about. And I just said yes, without even thinking about it. I still had anxieties. I still had a lot of issues that I was dealing with, but I was at a place where I said, you know what? I'm just going to say yes first and then do it and then see what happens, see if I enjoy it. And I did. I spoke for the whole hour. I think I actually went over a little bit, but people loved it. They keep bringing me back to tell that story. So let's jump into it because I don't want to miss out on anything. And I want you all to be able to answer some questions. So I'm going to start this slideshow. And because of my brain injury, sometimes there'll be things on here that I don't remember I put in there. And I'm just going to run with it. So I'm going to tell you stories. I'm going to go through my art. It's going to be awesome. And the first image you're going to see is one of me in childhood. I like to go linear. I like for you to see who I was before, who I am now, and who I was right in the middle. And that's the part where I like to focus in on because that's where I took in all this, learning, the education, the adapting part of it. Because positively got me so far, but it was the education that got me to the next level. So in high school, boom. In high school, I'm that one right in the middle. So this is 2001. This is the same year, 9/11. At the time, I knew I was going to join the military, did not know I was going to join the Marine Corps. It wasn't until 9/11 happened that I made that decision that I wanted to be the first one overseas and fighting for my country and just to help. And I had this yearning inside me that was just like trying to bust out. But if you notice that huge smile right there, that's the type of person I was. I was class clown. I was prom king. I could do anything in front of anybody. And that was my personality. I loved life, but I was from a town of 1,100 people. That's a small town. It's 1 square foot by 1 square foot. The whole town is. I had 22 kids in my graduating class. So art and music wasn't really an option. It wasn't taught that much. It wasn't even in my art class. After I went back years later and I talked to my teacher about me doing an installation, she was like, "What's an installation?" So that's who our teachers were. Again, nothing bad about them, but it was just the school didn't have the resources. It was a tiny school. But I knew I was going to go to the military. And then 9/11 happened. I was down. I was shocked, just like everyone else was. I felt like I was attacked. But I was only a sophomore. Or maybe I was going to junior year. Maybe I was a sophomore. I'll go back to that. And so I said, you know what? I went home and I said, Mom, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. I'm going to do infantry. I want to be the first one fighting overseas. And she didn't like that. Obviously, no mother's going to like that right at the height of the war. And so she said, no, wait till you're 18 to sign up. Give you some time to think. And me, improvising. And I said, you know what? If you let me sign up now when I'm 17, then I'll get a year of training under my belt before I go to boot camp. Wouldn't you rather have me some training than 18 just signing up and going? And they agreed to it and they let me sign. So full year, I got to do a build up. But in 2003, 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I was flying out to MCRD, San Diego, Camp Pendleton, to do my boot camp training for the Marine Corps. So I do this workup. I get there. Boot camp's horrible, obviously. And then within the first 2 weeks, they come out and they say, Richard Casper on this list. Now, if you know anything about the military, you do not want to be on a list. That's the last place you want to be on. And I didn't know who was coming in calling my name. And about 20 other names were on that list. And then we all go with them. And then we see 20 people coming from another platoon. 20 people come from another platoon. We're like, where are we going? They called us special testers. And so in high school, knowing I was going into the Marine Corps, I kind of made a boo-boo. I just went down on all the state standardized testing and went C, 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 because I didn't think that education was a thing for me. I didn't think I needed college. I come from a kind of messed up family. All three of my older siblings have been to jail or prison. Nobody's completed high school. I think my mom is the only one that completed high school. My dad got his GED. So I just, at the moment, didn't think education was for me. So when they come out saying I'm a special tester, and I'm thinking about these tests I took, I'm like, oh man, is there like a whole nother wing for me I had to go to? But there wasn't. It was actually, I tested really high on my ASVAB scores when it comes to mathematics and science. And so they selected us, and I don't want to give it away too early. Let me show you this photo first. Boom. So that's what a special tester was. I was selected to guard the President of the United States. We didn't know this. It was about 2 months into boot camp. We have 3-month boot camp. When we finally came in, after all those people, it started with around 400 of us. It got down to about 20 of us before they actually told us what we were doing. We still didn't know. Every time we came back, there was less and less people there. I was like, are they killing them? But I just didn't know what was happening to them. And then it ended with just us, and they said, you get to go. Inside of me, I had this weird process going on. I was thinking, okay, my friends are going to go to war. I signed up to go to war and go overseas and fight for my country. But now if I go this route, I'm going to have another 2 months after my school of infantry. I was going to have another 2 months on top of that as a security force school. I was going to have another who knows how long at Washington, D.C. till I get my clearance. And then I'd go up there. I didn't know if I'd actually make it to Iraq in that 4-year time. But I still said, you know what, I'm just going to let it go and see where I go. I ended up going to Camp David after I was in Washington, D.C. for 11 whole months. So that was a process. I had to wait. So it took me around 18 months total from the time I left boot camp to go SOI to security force school to Washington, D.C. to finally up to Camp David. And I chose Camp David because it was less people. I was a country boy. I felt like it was up in the mountains that I'd feel better there. I also heard that you get to interact with the president more. And we did. George W. Bush took a photo with every single veteran, military personnel, family. Every Christmas he went up there. He utilizes each Christmas. So when I left there, I had about 4 photos of President Bush and his family, which my mom thought was really cool. Because at the end of that too, I get to select one person to go to the White House as I was separating from Camp David and get to meet the president. So I brought my mom. She was super proud of that. And but right before I left, they actually asked me to stay at Camp David. And I knew that if I stayed like my friends did, I would never go overseas. And I didn't want to get out of the Marine Corps never serving and going overseas just because the time frame I was in, 03 to 07, like that was prime time. And I didn't want to say I served during those years without actually going to fight for my country. So I said, send me to the first people who are going. They sent me to a unit called 27, and then I didn't meet deployment timeframes with them either. They said, hey, you get out way before we get back from Iraq, so we can't take you with us. And I'm like, what's a guy got to do to get to Iraq around here? So I said, is there another unit going soon? And they said, yeah, there's under the 1st Tank Battalion, there's this unit called TOWs, so you'll be mounted infantry for the most part. I said, sweet, sign me up. I went to 1st TOWs, finally went overseas. We go to Fallujah, Iraq. Again, here's another awesome photo of me. Again, I brought my sense of humor with me over to Iraq. I never let a moment die without trying to insert some sort of comedy. But I show these photos because when I came home, I was a completely different person. Within the first 4 months of me being in Iraq, in Fallujah, my Humvee was hit 4 separate times by I.E.D.s, explosions, explosive devices, bombs, whatever you want to call them. And my best friend was shot and killed beside me in December of 2006. And so he was my gunner. He was sitting right next to me when he was shot and killed. And so obviously that's going to have a traumatic effect on you. It's going to change your course of life. It's going to, there's a famous quote that says, war makes a good man worse and a good man great and a bad man worse. And that's set up because you could either choose to take in these disabilities and then own them and overcome them, or you can well own them and just say like, hey, woe is me, I'm an injured veteran. And so luckily I was able to take the positive route, saying I'm going to overcome this. But I didn't even know I had an issue. So after that first 4 months, and I'm injured and I'm unfit for duty is what they called me, because I had so many concussions, but I had to stay overseas. So I didn't just get flown back home. I had to stay on the base now. I just couldn't go outside the wire anymore. So I'm on base, filling up sandbags, eating lunch, eating breakfast, eating dinner, just going throughout my day, not using my brain. So I don't know how big this issue is. So I'm sitting there, I'm riding this out, and I'm like, okay, time to go home. 3 months later, right when I touched down from Fallujah, I just start checking out of the Marine Corps. They said, do you want to see a doctor? I said, I don't think so. You guys would have sent me to see a doctor if you thought something was jacked up. I guess I'm good. Signing out, all that fun stuff. I take the next 6 months off. Again, not using my brain. I just came home from war where I almost died a lot of times. So I wanted to live life for a little bit. I had a Harley. I took it to Sturgis. I came back. I said, okay, time for me to actually do something with my life. I need to go to college. I need to get a job. I got a job, random job at Dick's Sporting Goods while I enrolled into a place called Heartland Community College in Bloomington, Illinois, for anybody who knows it. And so I go there and I'm like, I'm going to learn about education, and I want to learn about business. I want to learn about a little bit of everything. I wanted to really ultimately be an entrepreneur, but I wanted to kind of dabble. And so my thought process was 2 years community college and then go to a 4-year school and figure out what I need to do. So within the first few weeks of class, I started noticing a little bit of difference in me. Not a huge one, but a little bit. Like I started being confused really easily. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing that before. It's just I never had to actually actively use my brain, because again, I took so much time off just kind of living my life. I didn't have to do assignments. I didn't have to remember certain appointments. And so I started missing some classes on accident. I started not being able to log into my logins on this online course. And it was just getting to the point where I ended up failing my first class I ever signed up for. And I said, you know what? I'm not this stupid. Like, what is happening to me? So I went to the VA hospital, and that's when they ended up diagnosing me with left traumatic brain injury, PTSD, a bunch of other issues like tinnitus, which a lot of veterans get. I had arthritis, degenerative disc disease, a lot of stuff from the overpressure in the cabin, tore cartilage in my chest. I still had some issues with that. And it was just all these different problems that kind of kept going. And I had migraines all the time. And so now I'm down in the dumps. I say if 0 was killing myself and 100 was me before war, I was at a 9. A complete 9. And legitimately, it's only because my faith. And that's the only thing that kept me above water. But I said, you know what? I need to adapt again. This is a completely new me. What can I do to succeed? I have this background of guarding the president. I had an above top secret clearance. It's called Yankee White, category 2. Sounds fake. Google it. I think it has its own Wikipedia. And so I have this clearance. I guarded the president. I could do it. I can go back. Maybe I can go into the FBI or the CIA, do something like that if I can only just get a degree. What can I get a degree in? And I started thinking, well, I'm starting to get really bad anxieties. And I did. I had to do one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher in college because I couldn't get up in front of class of these 18 and 19-year-old kids. You know how humiliating that was for me? A combat disabled veteran, guarded the president, class clown, could do anything in front of anybody. And now here I am with these kids who are younger than me, who have no real life experience. And I can't even talk. I can't even get up there and just read a story that I wrote or some research paper that I did. I had to do one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher. And it was humiliating because the other kids in the class, they knew that I wasn't speaking. So they knew something was up. And so it just killed me. And these issues were just driving me down. But I said, you know what? I can do this. I could still be successful. I just need a degree. What can I do? And honestly, I thought it was just going to be an easy cop-out. Oh, yeah, let me go to the next slide. I've been talking about these transitions. This is all the stuff that was happening to me at the time. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, what can I do based off of my issues and what I'm going through? And I decided, you know what? I'm going to do art. easy cop out. Let's just do art. I could be around people who like me, have anxiety, don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. I could sit in the corner. So legit, that's my thought process on doing this. I was like, okay, change the trajectory. I do this, I get a degree, I transition, go into FBI CIA, something like that. And I'm in my first few months or semesters of these classes. I was taking drawing, painting, all this stuff. And I got to this point where I had this thing inside of me that really wanted to talk about my buddy who was shot and killed beside me. And I didn't know what to do. And so, wait, I don't even know. Boom. See that? I had to sneak in there real quick because I want to make sure my talk was on point. I have this photo that I took at my gunner's grave. And my uncle took this of me. I just love this photo. I love what it captures. So I said, you know what? In this drawing class, I said, I'm gonna recreate this in a chalk pastel for me. I want this. I want to create something, hold it on the wall, something I'm proud of. And so I start coloring this in. I do everything the way it's supposed to be. Skin tones, the cami shorts, the roses, the headstone. They're all colored in the colors they're supposed to be. So the only thing not left is the background. And the teacher comes around. And he says, hey, Richard, I obviously know you're going to do the background green because of grass. But I just want to really encourage you to do it a color that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to you. Doesn't make sense to the way the grass would feel or be. It makes sense to the way that you feel about an emotion attached to this experience. And I was like, man, that's dumb. I don't want to do that. This is an awesome drawing. Like, this is such a cool a coloring, and I was super proud of it. And I thought if I put any other color in it, I'd just mess it up. And I spent so much time on it. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. He's the teacher. Let's just do it. I did everything red. I think that's the next photo. Boom, everything red. And I just didn't know. Still didn't know why I did it, but I put it up for a critique. In the art world, they do critiques. I did not know this. Again, I'm so art dumb. I was just getting into it as a cop-out. I had no artist influence. I had no idea who artists were. So nothing. And I didn't know that you had to do critiques. So I put this up on the wall, and they said, you know, Richard, would you like to talk about your piece? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell these kids about what I went through in war. Like, I'm not going to talk about this piece. That's what I was saying in my head. But I just said no. And then he said, students, do you want to talk about Richard's piece? And one by one, each student would say, I think you put red in the background because you're angry that he died. Another person, I think you put red in there because because you loved him, because you loved your friendship with him, and that you guys were friends, and that this is someone that's really truly close to you. And then another person said, I think you put red in there because you saw him die and you saw the blood. And I'm sitting here thinking, how do these kids who have no idea about my life experience, how did they just feel what I felt a little bit? How do they know my story? I just put one color in there and told them that complete story. It blew my mind. For a split second, I felt like I was connected to them, like they were my battle buddies. It was insane. I was telling my story without telling my story. That's the one thing that we all need to be able to do when we go through a traumatic experience. It doesn't, not even just veterans. If you go through a car accident as a kid, if you go through these things, there's things that we think other people cannot relate to. But if we could just get them to feel the way we feel or think the way that we think about that experience, we feel connected and we feel like we're not alone out there. That's what this piece did for me. And that's why I started diving into the art. So we had this representative from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago come down. If you don't know them, it's one of the best art schools in the country. George O'Keeffe, Walt Disney. Don't worry, I didn't know who they were either. And they're in my backyard. I was in Illinois, around Peoria, Bloomington area. They're of Chicago. No idea. So they come down and they promote. They say, hey, we're up here. We're awesome. You should come. Telling all the class that. I tell my teacher, I think I'm going to apply for this school. After my 2 years here, get my associates in arts, go up there, kill it up there, He said, no, you shouldn't apply. And I'm sitting here like, wait a minute, why not? He said, you either have a lot of money or you've been studying art pretty much your whole life, if you want to be enrolled in the school. Again, optimism. I adapted. I evolved from the combat warrior to the artist. And so I said, you know what? This is the only school I'm going to apply for. And he's not a bad teacher. I understand where he's come from. He was just trying to protect me. I went up there with my whole what do you call it, portfolio, and it's all still lifes besides two pieces. That piece I just showed you in another painting, it's like a Harley turning into an eagle. Oh wait, no, I had one more painting too. It was more conceptual, but so I had three pretty much conceptual ideas. The rest all still lifes. So they're getting this and they're like, ugh, like, you're a good draftsman, you're a good drawer, good painter, awesome. But our school is about something a lot different. It's about innovation. It's about new things. It's about just all these things they started spitting out. And I said, you know what? Again, in the moment, I just thought back and said, I just learned art. I just learned how to do this. I was restricted at the school I was at by the teacher to teach the things he had to teach at the entry level. But here's what I want to do. I know you see this work, but I want you to know what it's like to be blown up. I want you to feel that inside of you. I want you to know what loss of innocence looks like. Do you know what that looks like? I want to show you what that looks like through the arts. And so I sold myself, and they even brought in another person to do another review, and I pitched them too, and they said, you know what? Let's give them a shot. And that's what got me into the School of Art Institute of Chicago. And the first class I ever took was a collage class. Did not know that was a class. Again, I was like, wait, you just put stuff together? Sign me up. And I go in there, and it legitimately changed my life, though, because before, when I was just thinking about these colors that were changing my life, just by putting little different, symbolism and colors in there that evoke emotion, I wasn't looking at the world as art. When you look at the world as art, you start seeing things differently. You start seeing different perspectives. You start understanding yourself a lot more. So for example, when I went to this class for the first time, and this is one of the first collage pieces I did, I started thinking about my own journey into the art world. I started breaking down what it was to be a Marine and now an artist. So I got these 4 oversized G.I. Joes, and I put our toy soldiers. And the one at the bottom, if you can't see it on there, but his foot is poking out of that screen print. So I just went and found an old beat up painting that someone was discarding, some old screen printing someone was discarding, and I glued these guys on there and pressed them in. What I was saying was that I was feeling suffocated, and my team was feeling suffocated, and everyone was trying to figure out how to survive, and I was kicking through, and I was gonna make art be the thing that saved me. And so that was my first way of like letting it out. So now every time I went into a store and I'd see objects, I would think about some of the things I went through and be like, how can I tell my story with this clock? How can I tell my story with this random brush? And so I started trying to figure out how to heal myself just by being open and being into that artist brain. And so I dived in more, and I went into this ceramics. I had art dumb, super art dumb. I thought ceramics was just clay or just plates and bowls. Thought you could do a class, plates and bowls. No, it's actual clay. And my friend showed it to me. I lost myself in clay. I would work with clay 8 hours at a time and not think about war. That was good to me. That was therapeutic to me, that not thinking. And so I said, this is something I want to do. I ended up doing ceramics the rest of the time I was there. I ditched the drawing, painting. I still did some collage and some random classes, but ceramics was my thing. This is my first piece ever. Super tiny. This shows you where I was at still in the state I was in. I use green to represent military, red to represent my depression, anxieties, and I put obviously in the hunched position saying I was sad, I didn't know how to get out of it. That was my first piece ever. And then I started getting a little bit more excited to tell my story, which is weird. Most people don't want to tell the stories about what they went through. But I was sitting here thinking, how do I tell people about my brain injury? How do I tell people about my buddy who died? Because I was excited to feel connected to them. And so here's this piece where I made the neck is actually the I.E.D. that's going through my head and busting out. And so I'm talking about my left traumatic brain injury, and this I.E.D. is now connected to my life. And then I went on, this was one of my BFA pieces, or my BFA piece, where I like to trick people into having conversations. Being in the art world, I knew there was a lot of people that probably didn't understand the military, didn't understand me. And so I said, you know what, they might not even want to have a conversation with me because I am a vet. So I want to do something where I could draw them in and then force them to have conversations with me. So I created this 50-gallon oil drum. I did a hand coiled this bad boy out of clay all the way up. Did some gunmetal black. Made these helmets for each veteran that lost their life during that semester and put them inside there. And then when you come up to it, you can't see that they're helmets. So from far away, you just start walking up to it, seeing it's just this big barrel that you think is an actual metal oil drum. So they come up to it, then they start seeing these little drawings on the side of it, which are, I had my nieces at the time, they were like 4 and 6 or 4 and 8. They started drawing on these pieces because that was a loss of innocence. My whole thing was I wanted them to come up and see inside there and kind of be like, oh my gosh. And so the relation with the oil and Iraq and the helmets and more and the innocence, I just really wanted to get people thinking about it. And then I went another step further on the loss of innocence and war. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make these disfigured creatures, people, out of ceramic, and then I'm going to have my nieces color on them. And so I videoed the whole thing. Sorry, I don't have the video anymore. It's somewhere on one of my old computers. But that capturing of the moment of them painting the helmet and saying, I'm going to put peace signs on him. They were identifying them as actual people and wanting to put these happy colors and these peace signs and all this stuff. And I said, that's what you're missing. If you ever had to take the life of someone, watch someone die, be blown up, be through this traumatic experience, there's something that's taken away from you. And it was that. It was that just unknowingly just putting love on people that you don't know, that are disfigured, but not seeing it. And it's a beautiful thing. And so then I went, and this is one step, I think this is the last piece I have for mine that I want to show, but this is the piece that got the whole program started, the Creative I.E.D.s program started. Again, talking about people not understanding that people are still overseas dying in war, I did another thing where I took helmets, made them for all the people who had died that semester, and put them in the admissions office, putting them an actual physically supporting this cabinet of students inside there. And the reason I did that was I wanted to tell people, whether you like it or not, you're being held up by the people who are going and fighting for our freedom and the ones that did it in the past. So you can actually go, and the dean of the school actually went up and walked on top of my helmets because they could support them. And so that goes into discovering music, which is, I'm going to be a little bit on this because I really want to talk about the educational part of all this. The whole parallel of me going through school, I was doing creative writing. I learned how to play guitar via YouTube, and I was writing a song about Luke. So I was trying for a whole year to get a song that really put him on the pedestal he needed to be. Because in my mind, if I came up to someone and I started trying to talk about him, I would cry. I would bust down, cry, not be able to get it off my chest. And I didn't want to do that. You all can't see me, but I'm 6'5", combat Marine, tattoos. And so I just didn't feel comfortable being sad around people, which is an issue. But the military, they don't teach, they strip away your vulnerability because it helps you survive in war. But when you come back home, they don't give it back to you. And that's when I was missing, and that's why I was so afraid. But I thought, what if I could have a song about Luke that when someone asked me about him, I could just give it to him and walk away. So I'm doing my job. I'm telling his story. I'm keeping him alive. But then I could walk away and then not cry and not feel bad about myself. So I was digging into this songwriting forever. Did not do what I wanted it to do. The song didn't. And I said, what if I just paired up with a professional songwriter and they could just tell my story for me? So I met someone in Chicago who had multiple #1 hits, and I just went up to him, again, shot my shot, and said, hey, if I come to you in Nashville, will you take the time to write my story with me? Because I've been trying to write this song about my buddy who was killed, and it just doesn't do him justice. And I have so much inside of me I need to get out. Will you help me? And he said yes. He said yes. I was over the moon, and I drove down there to Nashville, and probably a month later because he was all booked up. And he told my story in a song and a half. We had a whole song and a half written in 3 hours. Changed my life and perspective. And that's where Creative I.E.D.s started. Creative I.E.D.s, the nonprofit I co-founded back in 2013, helps empower wounded veterans to heal through the arts and music. I wanted to give veterans the same tract I had because I knew they wouldn't do it. Veterans like me don't get out and just dive into the arts and music or even education sometimes. And so I said, how do I build programs that veterans will not turn down? So our programs, we enroll veterans into the best art schools in the country. We pay for their tuition, their housing, their food. All 3 weeks, they're taught by another combat veteran to tell that story. It's absolutely amazing because I'm getting rid of all the friction points that it takes for someone to go seek help. Because veterans will be like, oh, free trip to Chicago to do art, but I get to hang out with other combat vets. And yeah, I'll do that. Even if they don't like art, being able to be enrolled, fully accredited in an art school like the school there in Chicago makes them alumni. That's what gets them pumped about just going. It's that being at the top of the mountain. And that's why we do what we do, because There's 20 suicides in the veteran and military space today. 14 of those 20 do not seek help. You have to design programs that make sure that their excitement and everything outweighs their depression and their anxiety and everything else, because they're not going to go to a program they're not excited about. So that's why I made sure that we're at the top art schools, that we use the top songwriters, and we pay for everything, because I was getting rid of all those friction points. So here's some of the artwork that we displayed. That veteran in the white actually did a performance piece. The veterans who come through our program had never done art before. So we enroll them into the school with no art background at all. They get to learn with other veterans for 3 weeks straight how to tell their individualized story that they can't talk about. That Iraqi war veteran, if you look there on the right, there's this little photo of a child and a red bouncy ball. For 2 hours, that veteran threw a bouncy ball to that kid, and it just bounced right back. 2 hours. He took that photo when he was in Iraq, and he wanted to talk about his own kids and this kid. And it was an emotional piece, but when he got there, he didn't know how to do that. He just knew he had a story to tell. So we helped them through education. If you are intentional about the way you educate, we're not doing art therapy. We're not doing music therapy. We're teaching art, how to be an artist, how to think like an artist, but we're doing it very intentionally to make sure they get the biggest bang for their buck. We're not going in there and trying to get them to do all the research on their own. We're saying, what is your story? Here's what your story looks like as an art piece, because you can't teach a veteran who doesn't want to know about art. You can't take him to a Picasso and say, this is why he changed the figure 28 times. This is why he colored it this way. They're never going to connect to it if they don't have an emotional connection to that piece. But the moment they tell me their story and I say, here's what your story looks like as an art piece, this symbol, this color, this thing, and now they're identifying those pieces. And I say, well, you can't use what I just gave you, but you could use pieces of it. And now for the next 3 weeks, explore and try to find a way to tell your story through different symbols, through different concepts. And that's what they do. And I'm just going to show you a few of these pieces. So this is one of our veterans that came through, never, he actually drew. Okay, the next veteran has never done art in his life. This veteran did like to draw. His name is Marco. I was like, the next veteran's Gino. This one's Marco. And Marco applied for our program, and I accepted him. He came through full 3 weeks in Chicago. He was I.E.D., so he used to take apart bombs. His big piece that he wanted to do, which you see here, is he made these 2 ceramic cylinders, which are supposed to be bombs, and he did these wires, and he took this big clock, and he put his camis around it and put trash all around it. And what he said at the end of the program, and what he was talked about to civilians when we did a display of this piece, was that little did I know that the whole time I was taking apart bombs in Iraq, I was putting them inside myself. That was a powerful statement. And then one thing he said, even that it's probably making me cry right now, I came into his room, because they stay in the dorm rooms like normal students. Everything about this, they get a syllabus, they have curriculum. If they miss more than 3 classes, they're out for the summer semester. And so I don't treat it like a program. I treat it like they're going to school. But I go into his dorm because he says, hey, Richard, can you talk? And I said, yeah. I come in there, and he's like, man, I just want to tell you that before you accepted me to this program, I was actually selling all of my stuff because I was going to kill myself. My kid was being raised by another man. I felt like I was a piece of crap. I felt like I couldn't even go to school. I wanted to go to school for nursing. Didn't think I could go because I thought there was too many barriers. After coming here and just being able to be enrolled and seeing how easy that process was, and then being able to tell my story, I guarantee you when I go back home, I'm going to sign up for nursing school. And he did. Because we're not trying to teach them how to be full artists or full songwriters. We're just trying to teach them how to get over those humps, how to get over those triggers, how to adapt and overcome and improvise and evolve as people. And that's what's happening in their brain. They're learning how to get rid of these little bitty triggers, and nothing says it better than this piece. This veteran never did art before. He's a Marine. His name's Gino. His story was that he was with this combat camera guy. He said he was his best friend. They became friends right away. They were in Afghanistan. His friend was shot, ended up dying in his arms. Long story, but when me and Marco did our 101, or me and Gino did our 101, he told me this story. And he said, how do I talk about this? Like in art, like how do you take someone's death and like he got shot in a cornfield? We had to end up medevacing him out of this pomegranate field, and he was telling me his last words. Like those are what I hear over and over. And the worst part about it was that I think we could have saved him if it didn't take over 30 minutes for the chopper to get there and get off the ground. And so I said, look, sometimes when you create a piece, it's more important the process of creating it. Kind of like what I did with my nieces when they painted those pieces. That process of them making it was so much more important than the actual final pieces. And I told Gino this, and I said, because you're really stuck on this 30 minutes thing, why don't you use 30 as a tool? You could use it to either write his words 30 times. You can create a piece in 30 minutes. You can I want you to focus on this as you go out there and think about it. And really, if you want to it depends on how much you want to tell people your story. If you don't want to let people in, like if you don't want to let civilians into your story yet, but you want to let combat veterans in, make it as abstract as possible. So when you have these interactions, you could tell combat veterans one thing, you could tell civilians another thing. That empowers you to be the keeper of those secrets and let people know if you only want to know. So now you're not spilling your whole story, but you're getting it outside yourself. And so he wanted to do a little bit more abstract piece, but he really wanted to hone in on this. I said, you could do like a piece of corn, like you could legitimately just go buy a piece of corn and write down his 9 words and end with a pomegranate. And that could be your whole piece if you want to do ultimately abstract. So that's what I gave him. And I said, again, can't use my piece, but you could use pieces of it as you go out there. And he said, Richard, the problem is that pomegranates are my trigger now. Anytime I go into a supermarket or anything else and I see pomegranate, even if there's a drink that has pomegranate juice in it, I see that and I instantly go back to that moment and I freak out. I drop all the stuff I'm with, I have panic attack, and I leave. And I said, well, when you start diving into this, you're going to see that. And I was like, I knew what was going to happen, but I said, hey, we can make a pomegranate out of ceramics. You don't actually have to be there. You don't have to go get it. But I wanted to challenge and push him to actually identify what that trigger was and then how to overcome it. So 3 weeks later, I get a phone call and he's like, Richard, I can't find a pomegranate anywhere. I was like, or if you're Gen X, Richard, I can't find a pomegranate anywhere. I went to Jewel, I went to the Target, I went to whatever, and I'm sitting here almost crying thinking, I don't even know if he knows that he's now thinking about the pomegranates differently. Now every time he goes into a supermarket or a store, when he sees it, he's going to think about his art piece. He just repurposed that memory, which a lot of people don't know. You could repurpose memories. If you bring them up again and you're in a state of the same emotional state you were when it happened, so for him, his buddy dying, and you leave on a good note, like you leave super positive from that same moment, then you could repurpose it. So that's what happens in our songwriting sessions when veterans write songs and they tell those stories and they come out with a song that they want to send it to the world. They're so excited that they attach that emotion to it. It's powerful and it's awesome. And that's what he did with the pomegranate. He ended up getting this pomegranate. He wrote his friend's dying words for 30 minutes. He set a timer. He wrote in red paint, 30 minutes. I love my life. I love my life. I love my life. And he did it on this big board that he painted. And it's really hard to tell. But in that bottom right corner, as you're looking at it, there's something white with little like maroonish things. That's a hand. He did a hand plaster mold of it, or he did a plaster mold of his hand like this. And he has pomegranate seeds, real pomegranate seeds that fall to the floor with a pomegranate. Told his whole story with just a few little things, and it ended up changing his life. Today, he's now successfully working. He's not a full artist, but he donated 10 Procreates to veterans to continue, because he said, hey, Richard, I don't have access to kilns and paints and all this stuff, but as I traveled for work, I have an iPad, and I just create. I create all the time on Procreate, and I was so thankful for that. I have multiple stories about that, but again, that portion is where I want to lean in on you all, because I think we could still intentionally teach anybody who's been through stress. Suicide rates have risen in every single age bracket since 2008. I think over 50%. It's been something insane. So we need new ways to talk. We need new ways to be able to create this dialogue. And I think if you do education the right ways, you're very intentional about the way you teach certain things, you're going to be able to do exactly what I've been doing with these veterans. Obviously, you don't have to go as intense, but Creative Vets on our end is actually trying to create a Creative Vets University online platform that we just give to schools to host art programming for veterans so that we could teach them. So it's still a work in progress. But to real quick, I love ending on this. I want you all to hear one of the songs that we wrote because like this says, one day of the writing session did more for me than 3 years. Actually, I think I have a few more slides. Boom. See, I remembered. Those are just a few of our partners. We have some education programs with the Country Music Hall of Fame. We now partner with Big Machine Label Group, which is amazing. They have awesome artists, Floor Georgia Line, Tim McGraw, Rascal Flatts, Lady A, Justin Moore, Brantley Gilbert, all those. They release our music now. And then we partner with Alexa, which I should have probably put on here. But if you, I'm sorry if you have one in your house, but if you say, Alexa, play music by veterans, it should play our Creative Vets music because we're now getting in the homes of the veterans with veteran created music for veterans by veterans. Like the art program, we'll fly veterans to Nashville to write with pro and #1 songwriters like I'm about to do today with Craig Morgan. We're going to write their story, tell it, and then push it out to the world so everyone can relate to it. And then lastly, again, before I play the song, which I pre-recorded just to make sure the vocals were good because I'm using this kind of mic and I have a better, setup. And I'm not a good singer, so I had to do something else with it, with the vocals. You'll hear it. But I went from doing one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher to standing on stage at the Presidential Bush Center in Dallas, Texas, speaking on the Forum on Leadership. The Forum on Leadership that year, it was a year and a half ago, Dr. Henry Kissinger was the keynote. They were awarding Bill and Melinda Gates the awards, some sort of award, I should probably know what it is, that night. The CEO of Boeing introduced me. I was on the panels and discussing, and where I'm looking is like right at President Bush and Laura Bush. It was insane. I went from not doing, one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher to playing on stage and talking in front of 365 of these amazing individuals and leaders. It's insane. And that wasn't because of the VA. It wasn't because of some magic prescription. It was because I learned how to think like an artist. And not to become an artist, but to overcome all the things I was going through so I could do this and tell my story. So talk about a huge, huge way to improvise and adapt. And let me see. Yep, that was the last slide. So I'll be able to go to the song now. So I'm going to leave you with this. I always end with it now. Used to throw it in the middle, but it just, it's such a big song and emotional that you don't want to put this in the middle because the rest of it just goes blah. So this song is something that kind of became a cult classic in the military space. It's called They Call Me Doc. We wrote it with a corpsman who flew to town, wrote with some #1 writers. He just wanted to tell his story, but not just his, everyone who was in the line of being a corpsman or being a medic. He said when his buddies were blown up and he had to work on them and medevac them, there was also a doc or a corpsman on the chopper that came. And then as they were working on them and they got to the hospital, there was more medics and doctors and docs there. And so he said, I want to cover the track of all of them. And so if we can tell a story that tells my story and their story, that's what I want. And we did. And it's a song called They Call Me Doc. And I'm about to butcher it for you. If you want to hear a really good version, you can go online and go on YouTube. The band Walker McGuire sings it phenomenally. But I want to leave you with this one. And then I'll be available to answer any questions right after this gets done playing. But I want to thank you all so much. And I hope you got something out of this. Please feel free to reach out to me. All the information is on creativevets.org is our website. But you can reach out for me directly through that. I would love to hear from you all. Thank you and enjoy this song. Look what I did to this sound. A little bit different. We're in an echo chamber. I wanted to switch setups like this to make it sound more of a more full, I guess, and to help my voice because I'm not a professional singer. Just put a little reverb in there. It's a small room, not a lot to bounce off of. But I always finish with this song. I used to actually throw this in the middle of my talks, but that didn't go very well because it's like, the biggest thing, and it's emotional, and it's a great song. And anything you have to say after this kind of just falls at the wayside. So I learned my lesson. I'm going to play this now at the end, and then cut this off, and then answer some questions if anybody has any. But this song's They Call Me Doc. I hope you enjoy it. They call me Doc, I ain't got no degree. When it hits the fan, they're calling for me. From bluegrass, Kentucky, red blood on my hands. Nobody calls me hero except for my friends. And I woke up from dreams, find out they were real. I could tell you how it looks, but I can't tell you how it feels. Yeah, I've seen it all, watched heroes who fall, pick them up till they stand tall. I've been in the field, worked down to the bone, make sure all my brothers get back home. I've shared smiles, I've shed the tears, swore they'd make it out of here. When they scream, please make it stop. They call me Doc, they all know my name, stitched on this chest, it hangs from these chains. You won't read it in the paper, see it on the TV. I don't need no fame, it's fine by me. Yeah, when they're broken, bruised, I know just what I do. My job always starts when their job is through. Yeah, I've seen it all, watched heroes who fall, pick them up till they stand tall. I've been in the field, worked down to the bone, make sure all my brothers get back home. I've shared smiles, I've shed the tears, swore they'd make it out of here. When they scream, please make it stop. They call me Doc, they call me Doc. You'll never know the heartache looking a grown man in the eye when he asks, am I gonna make it? You've got a lie. They call me Doc, I ain't got no degree. When it hits the fan, they're calling for me. From bluegrass, Kentucky, red blood on my hands. Nobody calls me hero except for my friends. They call me Doc. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Will Pagan. I'm the Director of Instructional Design at TLT, and I will be moderating our live Q&A. So, Richard, I speak for everyone. I think it's truly inspirational hearing your story, everything about it. I hope for everyone else it frames your mindset for the rest of the day of how we are transformational in our own ways with our students and knowing, understanding the student experience. So again, thank you for joining us and sharing your story with us. It was truly inspirational.
Thank you so much. And sorry, I had to move rooms. So we're actually doing that right with Craig Morgan. So so I had to come out here to prep for that. But thank you.
Yeah, no, and thank you for taking the time, obviously, to do this with us.
Yeah.
So I'll start with a few questions I have in our live Q&A panel here. One question was, how do you think the arts in the K-12, kindergarten to 12th grade schools could help students' mental health, as it did for you and the veterans you teach?
That's actually an awesome question, because we haven't unleashed it yet, but we're trying to start our own Creative Eds Kids, because there's so many things. Like when I talked about that story about discovering that color, that emotion, that redness, I feel like there's a lot of lacking in the way that we teach what colors and what different things can mean. So if you're in a class and you're having someone, even if like real small children, you have them like drawing a house and drawing these things, give them options for the colors that they use, and then let them know what those meanings are behind those colors. What's going to happen is they take that home to their parents, and they're going to be like, hey, I colored this house red because it reminds me of this. And all of a sudden they're having conversations with their parents or with their teachers of things that you would never typically see, because they're unknowingly putting these colors and identifying them as symbols and ways to tell their stories. So we're actually starting to kind of dive into that realm, because we know that that's going to be emotional intelligence is going to be one of the best things that we could teach as they grow. And that's probably one of the simplest ways to do it, is introduce them at a young age. Because I had this opportunity, right, with my gunner who shot and killed his cousin, who was 9 when Luke died, and he didn't know how to process it. And I told him how I did it through music. And he started actually creative writing and rapping. And his mom came the next year and was like, this is so funny, but it's also so helpful. But Mark got real mad at me. And then I left and I came home, and he's like, Mom, I want you to listen to this rap I just made. And it was about doing the dishes or something. But if he didn't have that rap, they would have never discussed and communicated about that. So that's what I would say is encouraging this like higher level of thinking. How do we get these students to actually tap more into this emotional intelligence? Hope that helps.
Great, thank you, thank you. We have another question here of how is Creative Vets funded?
So right now it's mainly just private donors. We don't get anything from the state or government level just yet, but it's a ton of private donations and corporate sponsorships and grants. We get a lot of grants too. So we're still up and coming. Last time I spoke at UPSIA conference a few years back, we had so many schools come to us and be like, we want your program in our school. And I said, well, we pay for everything, the tuition, the housing, the food. So unless you can cover some sort of that cost, we won't be able to do this until we get enough funding to do it. Because I would love to offer this again to every school that we can. And some schools may already have that endowment and that practice, because we have it down pat. Like we can install this program into schools, but again, because we're making sure that these programs are the best they can be to these veterans, we go all in. We make sure that they're fully accredited just so they have access, so they feel like a normal student, because that's what provides that empowerment. And so we're very strategic about everything that we do. But yeah.
And I'm sure, I know in the discussion before during the talk that there will likely be some interest in trying to do something like this at Rutgers. You've inspired a lot of folks, and everyone saying that it'd be such a great thing if we could do something like that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And we do want to do some virtual stuff too, like create those programs I talked about.
We have another question here. I noticed that you shared a lot of stories of some of the men who participate in these programs and experiences. Do you find that women vets are not? What is the enrollment like with Creative Vets?
Yeah, no, that's another great question, because there's been some stats out there that show female veterans are more non-likely to seek help because they don't feel like they're a part of the tribe or the community, which is outrageous, because they should definitely feel like they're a part of it. So we actually don't get a ton that apply for our programs. When we do, there's some of the most beautiful stories we've ever heard, but I still have to talk them in to even tell them those stories, because they're like, no, you guys been through so much worse. I'm like, no, we haven't. All these situations are different, but the emotions are exactly the same, and you deserve it just like anybody else do. So we're trying to actually ramp up just female engagement and all across the board of all nonprofits. You might hear Craig singing in the background, so sorry.
Question.
Added bonus.
It's added bonus for us. That's what it is. I think it's wonderful what you're doing with vets, and I'm glad that you are going to do that with the kids. Minority kids in inner cities experience a lot of violence in their neighborhoods. Will you offer a program that will be targeted at minority students and that type of traumatic?
I would love that. Right now, we're blanket everybody, but we're going that route, because when I first came back to Nashville, I started volunteering at this place called Teen Dream Center. It was for all at risk youth, inner city kids. and it was a way to mentor them. And what I found out real quickly was that because I went to war and I went through some traumatic experience, that no matter what my skin tone was, they trusted me because they knew I've been in a battle. And they used to call me like Shooter Man and stuff, like, yo, Shooter Man. And then it was amazing. And I thought right then, wow, one time I thought I could never connect to them and let them know about the power of art and music. But just based off me telling that story, we had that thing in common. We both been through our own combat. They do it as a child going through the inner cities, and I went to war doing it. But there's a connection. So there's a group called Travis Manion Foundation who are already kind of doing that with mentorship with veterans and children. But I do want to get very specific as we grow, because again, we're a rather small nonprofit. We do a lot of huge things, but we're under the $500,000 mark when it comes to like revenue. So all these things we've built have been on shoestrings. So we will get there at that point.
All right. I have another one. How do you stay connected with the vets after the program? Do they in turn pass on their
Yes.
learnings
So
to others?
we actually have our veterans who go through the songwriting in our program. We have them mentor other veterans who've been through the program. So everything we do is based off of cultural competency, just making sure that they're able to continue learning and keep healing. And we have a bunch of other community-based programs and online programs for them specifically. So yeah, we have a lot of follow-up.
And does Creative Vets use virtual learning for any of their
Yes,
training programs?
not to the level of like college virtual training. We're trying to get there, but we have some country music hall of fame programs all online, so they learn how to write songs, and that's a follow-up and a pre-program where they learn the education and write another song. And we do a lot of live streaming classes, but that's what we're building into is like the actual virtual full courses.
Okay. Let's see what we have. Some more coming in here. Is there any overlap with, and this is sort of along the other lines of, is there any overlap with gang or incarcerated youth programming?
Not
But I
yet,
think
but
you were
that's exactly where we're
touching
going to
that
go. I mean,
before.
mainly it's always going to center around veterans and then teaching other people just because of our mission. But that's another route we want to go 100%.
You know, I have my own question. I was thinking as I was going through, and obviously because of my role in education here, and specifically with online, I was thinking of your experience with having that anxiety when you're first going to school and trying to relate with the students, and the anxiety with trying to get up and speak. Would an online environment help in that transition as a small stepping stone to then not
100%.
have
That'd be
I
perfect
guess the
baby
pressure?
step right into it, right into starting this process. Because you get comfortable with this, then you move on, you get more comfortable as you keep going.
See if there's other questions coming in. And if you could have any artist record a song with you you wrote, who would it be?
That's a tough one. I mean, it was Craig Morgan until today, so we got him.
There you go.
No, really. I mean, I want any artist that wants to be involved with what we're doing. Those are the ones I want, because I talked about this before. I never want someone doing it for the wrong reason. So I just want to make sure that they're fully invested in what we're doing, sharing these stories.
Absolutely. Here's another from a personal standpoint. Why do you think arts can open communication and feelings that are blocked by other
I think
avenues?
ultimately it's because it's empowering you to do it. You do it by yourself, and then you open it up to other people. When this conversation doesn't work, like if I'm talking directly to you and telling you my stories, I'm feeling a lot of like anxiety, like a lot of bad things. But when I do an art piece, all of a sudden me and you are looking at this art piece and talking about it. So it takes away that whole like eye contact, feeling like it's on me. You're able to put it into something and empower you through that.
Uh, Here's another. I would love for you to do a song with Lady Gaga. Would you
100%, I
do
would
it?
do that.
uh, in addition to the financial support, um, how can others, civilians, get involved?
I get this question a lot because we're so one-on-one with our veterans. It's really hard besides listen to our music. Honestly, it's free on all platforms. And just by listening to it, you're actually bringing money into our programs and you're just understanding the veteran mindset.
So remember that, everyone. Alexa,
Play music
play
by
Creative
veterans or
Vets.
shuffle creative vets music.
So, there you go. And we have, how can we spread the word about your program? What can we, and again, looking to support. So I guess, again, playing the music, but also just
Yeah,
making people aware and sharing the fact that
100%.
your website.
And I'm gonna have to, is there any, I have to, they're calling me in here.
Yeah, I think that should do it. I mean, you've been gracious and to answer all these questions. Really
I
appreciate the
appreciate it.
time you took for us
I
today.
love that you guys had me speak because again, anytime I could answer these questions and kind of drive this narrative, I'm this what my whole mission is.
Absolutely. I thank you again. Appreciate it, Richard. Uh, you know, virtual applause from
Thank
everyone
you.
as I see them coming through. Thank you.